be dropping stuff in the chat. Lisette will be recording Encore's running slides.
One thing before we start, so National Teen Board, so this is going to be recorded, and so we probably won't have there's not going to be a lot of interaction with an actual audience, so it'll be between you and me, which I should actually probably more fun, but feel free to, I will ask you stuff, but you can ask me things back, and to get in a conversation about poverty is an act of making poverty visible. So that's what we're going to be doing towards the end. So yeah, that's it. Just be as you can be. You were selected because you are you, and there's no need to be anything other than that, because that's pretty awesome. And that's it. We can start now.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Thank you for being here. We'll get y'all a second to get connected to your audio. All right. Thank you for your patience. And yeah, my name's Frederick. My pronouns are they, them in English and lay and AA in Spanish. I'm Beyond Differences Professional Development Program Manager, and I am super, super excited to be here with y'all today for our Poverty Visibility panel. This community-based curriculum is really close to my heart as the kid who grew up in a trailer park. And I have been blown away by the work that these students have done on this curriculum so far, and I cannot wait for you to see it. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to pass it over to our amazing Director of National Youth Program, Sally Matsuishi, and Sally's got the distinct pleasure of introducing you to our National Teen Board members. Take it away, Sally.
Hello, everybody. It's so great to be here. I'm excited to be able to introduce 3 members of our National Teen Board. I have with me today Jackie Law, Christopher Chan, and Ruth Mondesir. They are a part of the Poverty Visibility Team. The National Teen Board is a select group of about 40 youth activists from across the country who apply and then bring all of their talents to the work that we do at Beyond Differences. This release of curriculum will go out to about 10,000 schools, reaching about 5 million students. And what we wanted to do with all of you today is make poverty visible. So I'm going to set it up a little bit, and then we're going to talk to the young people who made this curriculum. So can I have the first slide? Okay, so who is making poverty visible is to actually make poverty visible. So there are about 11.6 million young people in America who are low income. 47% of public schools in America have majority low income students. But those are big numbers, right? Despite this, there is a kind of a cloak of shame around being low income, and it makes people feel socially isolated. The National Teen Board, by the way, more than 50% of our members of our National Teen Board are among the low-income people. We try to get our National Teen Board to reflect public schools in America. So if 47% of the public schools in the have majority low-income students, so do we. Next slide. So we want to talk about this poverty in terms of social isolation. And at Beyond Differences, we define social isolation as a lack of quality connections with others. So what does that mean? That's sort of 3 things. One is just the physical socially isolated. I don't have anyone to eat with at lunch. On the weekends, I'm home by myself. That's just physically socially isolated. Then the other one, which is like, it is a state, right, of being. The other one is loneliness, which is you can feel lonely in a crowd full of people. You can feel lonely on a basketball team. You can be lonely in the middle of the most busy part of your school. You can feel loneliness, right? It's a desire for connection that you're not actually feeling. And the last one is social isolation, which would be specialized, is that you're in a space, you have other people, you may be connected, but you don't feel seen. You don't feel like you belong. And what we're really trying to do at Beyond Differences is to get that sense of belonging, the sense of that you feel seen and valued in your school community. Okay, so next slide. So why do we do poverty visibility? So I didn't choose poverty visibility. The National Teen Board chose poverty visibility. And it's a particular need across the country right now because during pandemics, people's businesses failed, certain companies left certain communities, people got their hours cut back at work or lost their jobs in total. So there were a lot of like middle class people who suddenly found themselves in lower class. And then there are people who were in the lower class already who found themselves even further in poverty. And then those kids all went to school. And so there was this need to figure out what to do with belonging. And then it's how poverty plays out in creating social isolation. So this is Edgar in the center here. And I love this picture of Edgar because if anybody knows Edgar, that is a quintessential Edgar look, which is the big smile and the full laugh kind of guy. But Edgar, who is on this team but isn't with us today, helped us. I just made him sound like he died. Who isn't on the panel with us today? Helped me sort of define and how poverty plays out in social isolation. So I wanted to read some of these. And these are not all his words. He also talked to other people. One is, I live with my family, people who rent a room in our apartment, and I sleep on the couch. I never had people over like other kids because there just isn't space. So like if you have a social connection because you have friends over after school, it's hard to do that when you're low income, right? So many kids make connections at sports or in band or theater, but I take care of my siblings after school, so I could never participate in these activities. So that low-income kids have less venues or ways or times and places to connect. I live far away from my school where rents are cheaper, but it makes it so I can't participate in many activities because the bus schedule is limited. So if you live, this is the case with me, when I was a kid, I lived very far away from my school and I took the bus. So I couldn't do a lot of the things, but I couldn't live in the neighborhood that was more expensive that was near the school. So that cuts into your ability to make those connections. And finally, I have none of the closed computers or devices that are so valued. I also have not seen the hit movies or can afford to eat at the places that people talk about. So there's just not having the money to be able to be and participate in those places. And that's how being low income can play into social isolation. Okay, next slide. So we're going to talk about what they made. Okay, so Jackie, this is weird. I'm going to talk about Jackie because Jackie is now in the Zoom. But Jackie's story is the story that we chose to kind of be the jumping off point to our poverty visibility. So Jackie is a junior at Lowell High School. If you look at his little square and the Zoom, you can see Lowell High School's really nice whiteboard behind his head. He's in San Francisco, California. He was born and raised in Chinatown, the most densely populated area in the US. He's an activist who's uplifting low-income students like himself across the nation. So teachers, if you access our curriculum, there are two parts to Jackie's story, which is you can both read and listen to. Jackie was featured on public radio in a KQED perspective. And so you can listen to it, which is kind of great if you're teaching and you have kids that are on the neurospectrum and it's harder for them to read something silently, you can actually use the audio piece in your classroom. So we'll hear a little bit more from Jackie in just a second. I'm going to keep going and Jackie can tell his story of how he came to this. This is Ruth, who's also in the room with us today. So, oh, wait, go back. Do we have the ability to play the audio or no?
I think I'll have to reshare, but I can do that if you want to play the audio.
Yeah, can we play the audio really quick? And in the meantime, why I'm sorry, Encore, to have done that to you. In the meantime, I want to talk to members of the National Team Board. Jackie, did you get a haircut?
Yeah, no, I got it like a couple of days ago.
Oh, well, this is good. This is a good haircut. I'm glad that you got a haircut. I want to talk a little bit while they're getting this to work. Encore, you'll tell me when it works, right?
I'll tell you when it works.
Okay.
Oh, I want to let you know. Actually, I went without my mom this time, so that's why it's better.
Okay, you went, did you get it in Chinatown?
Yeah, right on Powell Street.
Oh, I think I know where you got it.
It's called New Image.
Um, for those of you who are not from San Francisco, Chinatown, they, like any ethnic neighborhood in America, there are certain places that everybody knows where you get the better haircut, where you get the better cheap haircut too, which is the better thing. So I want to just really quick, while we're here together, is I want to talk to the three of you about what brought you to want to do poverty visibility. And can I start with you, Ruth? Why poverty visibility?
One reason why I want to do poverty visibility is because I am a low income student, but I think I have a unique perspective in the sense that I am a low income student who went to both public and private high schools. So I know what that looks like. What does it look like? What are the educational disparities between public and high school education? What does that look like for a low income Black girl out of PWI not having large gaps in terms of knowledge for education? How does that make me struggle? And then also, how does financial aid affect that? I think because I have a lot of intersectional identities, and poverty is something, the poverty visibility team, I feel like really focuses on those intersectional identities for me the most, which is why I was drawn to it.
Yeah, terrific. For those of you, PWI stands for predominantly white institution. So it's an interesting perspective. And all of our national team boards members, by the way, have very intersectional identities. We choose them because they are able to speak on a lot of different things in depth, and also give that nuance, right? To give that texture, that realness to how identity really works and plays out in school. So Christopher, I just called you Christopher. I've never called you Christopher in my entire time knowing. Chris, why poverty visibility? Why did you choose? And you did a lot of work on this. So why this curriculum?
I chose this curriculum mostly because I really just wanted to help people like myself who grew up in low income neighborhoods and who is low income. And I just, I felt, most of all, I just wanted to make sure they didn't feel like this feeling of shame surrounding being low income, that I felt when I was a bit younger. And, feelings of being, not being like other kids, not having the same stuff they do. And that just spoke to me on a personal level. And I really wanted to work on fighting against that and advocating and giving a voice to these people.
Terrific. Thank you. That's sort of the benefit of the National Team Board. We don't sit there as 52, almost 53, 52-year-old adults and try and imagine what something is like, even though I did grow up with struggle in a lot of the members of the Beyond Differences team. This is a familiar topic, but we want young people to be supporting and helping young people. We want their stories to uplift other young people's stories because it's so much more powerful. And this recording is for teachers. And so just in terms of the research, right? If we look at Will Damon's work on purpose at Stanford, if we look at Carol Dweck's work at Penn, and also Angela Duckworth at Penn, that working on mindset and resilience and grit building, as well as connecting all of that to a sense of purpose. All of that research shows that when we work with young people, helping them find a sense of purpose, helping them see that their identities can be used to uplift other people, and then actually doing it, those young people who need help can then access those strings of connection in order to find that sense of belonging. So while it's my job is great because I get to hang out with Jackie, Chris, and Ruth, there is a method to this madness that in the curriculums that we are creating. Okay, so Jackie, we're gonna hear from you, and it's gonna be really weird and uncomfortable, but I'll be in the moment with you, so it won't be that bad. And I'm sure, like Chris and Ruth, we can make fun of you later, and that will be more fun. But why poverty visibility?
Okay, so similar to a lot of what Edgar has written down in our poverty visibility curriculum, When I was younger, a lot of times like I was too afraid and isolated to bring people over to my house. I didn't have anything I did over the weekends besides follow my mom to like her jobs. So soon after I joined Beyond Differences, I joined the um stand up for AAPI youth, but then I realized that a lot of what I want to say and what I want to share aligns more with poverty visibility. And a lot of what I do, I want to be able to uplift more people like me and tell them about the strengths they have and like how their experiences make them powerful rather than isolated. So I want other kids to be able to speak up like me.
We have a question in the chat, and we'll talk more about Jackie soon. They want to know what grades you're in and how old you are.
Oh, I can start. I'm Jackie Law, and I'm a junior in Lowell.
Okay. Chris, how old are you?
I'm 17.
And Ruth. Oh, you're the lady.
I'm a senior at Central University High School, and I am 17.
Okay. Cool thing about Ruth will be at Wellesley next year, which is the absolute perfect match for them. Just like I can't think of a better place for her to be. Okay, so Ankur, how are we coming with the audio?
Yes, I'm gonna click it, and I want to make sure if everyone can verify that they hear something.
Okay.
Support for Perspectives comes from Leif
no?
Cabraser, Hyman,
Great.
and Bernstein, seeking justice for the injured, victims of fraud, whistleblowers,
might go a
employees,
little-
and investors in the Bay Area and nationally for over 5 decades. Online at lchb.com.
We're
From
starting.
KQED.
As the son of immigrants from China, I grew up in a shelter as my parents worked to build a stable life for my sister and me. When most people think about shelters, it sounds scary and cold. For kids coming in for the first time, it's always a shock. I've seen them come in with their heads hung low, wanting to be invisible. Because I've been in shelters for most of my childhood, I know that feeling of shame and isolation all too well. This is why I've made it a point to reach out. It just takes one person to smile and start talking to help create a sense of belonging. When I was in middle school, whenever kids talked about home, I would freeze and stay silent. During that time, no one really knew me because there was so much I was not sharing about myself. I wouldn't. I couldn't bear the idea of anyone thinking poorly of my sick father or my mother who was working multiple jobs. Eventually, a mentor helped me own my experience and give it power. As soon as I started taking pride in my life story, I found those who would value me for my authentic self. Now kids from the shelter are some of my closest friends, and together, we have been working to uplift our community. Today, I draw upon my childhood in my community work at a nonprofit, helping other low-income kids feel seen and find pride in their experience. A couple of years ago, my family moved out of the shelter. Though my time had its share of challenges, I would not trade it for anything because it made me resilient and proud and gave me an unbreakable circle of genuine friends. With a perspective, I'm Jackie Law.
Okay. So that is so teachers, you don't have to play the weird commercial that's in front of it. It's because it's from public radio. It has that, but that's a snippet of Jackie's story. So part of Jackie's story also comes with the following slide, which is, so you can bring Jackie's voice in the classroom. These are sort of discussion questions that you can have there. Jackie talks about a terrible choice low-income kids have to make. Talk about your struggle and risk getting made fun of, or never talk about your life, which makes it so no one knows you. How would not talking about your family or home life limit your ability to connect to others? Also, this is a picture of Ruth that I just really like. So this is a point that you can talk about, right? Notice you do not have to be low income or high income or any income to have engage in this lesson. It's meant to be universal. So it's not, we really wanted to shy away from like, let's take really privileged kids and talk about low income kids, or let's take low income kids and talk about it only in this space. We really wanted to have that wonderful. Next slide. Jackie talks about all the skills he has learned as a low-income person and how proud he is of his hardworking mother. For so long, he could not reveal any of this to anyone. What could have been done to make his experience something to be proud of? How would Jackie have been able to share story to enrich the community? So questions have been made here. And by the way, some of these were made in context and with the National Team Board. Is what we're really doing here is calling on different school communities to really think of, like, to really analyze their cultures, right? Why wasn't this? And in our community, could a kid like Jackie have a voice here? And then the secondary question, more than analyzing your own culture, is that if we don't have those voices, what are we missing out on? I mean, when after you listen to Jackie's story, it's very clear, well, for me, that I'd want to hang out with Jackie, but for so long people didn't, because they didn't know the cool story. So this is really that secondary piece of analyzing your own culture and then looking about what is missing. Next slide. And the last question, in the end of his story, Jackie is so proud of his experience as a low-income person and is working to uplift other low-income kids. What enables Jackie to see his life growing up poor as a superpower? So this is really calling on, to a certain part, teachers, mentors, or peers, and that to see somebody, right? What enabled somebody else to recognize their superpower? Did somebody else's words make it safe for Jackie to come into his incredible authentic self? So as teachers, you can use the whole lesson. You could listen to Jackie's story or read it. There's a longer, there are 3 different versions, a long one, a medium one, and a short, and an audio one. You can answer one question if you only have like 15-20 minutes, or you can make a full lesson for 50 minutes. So this is just one of the lessons. What's the next slide? In the poverty visibility unit, the next one is one we call Please Don't, which is about microaggressions that commonly happen to low-income kids. So all the members of the poverty visibility team came up with things that they have heard around them and how it made them feel. And then we go through and we sort of deconstruct it so people can understand where it comes from. Unfortunately, Briggs is the main person who worked on this, but is unable to be here today. But if the other members of the National Team Board can help me out, we can show how this works. So if you're in a classroom, the big quote bubble. The quote bubble is all the things the National Team Board came up with that they have either heard as low-income students, and then the next is the underlying message, and then where it comes from. So Chris, are you down to read some of the have you ever heard things?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you ever heard everyone else got here on time? You have to manage your time better. Everyone else volunteered time. I guess you don't care as much as they do. Don't you have something else to wear that's clean? Many parents work so hard they have things. If the poor work harder, they would not be poor.
So these are common things. So when I say common, the young people come up with lists of things that they've heard. These have come up multiple times. There are 3 different pages, and there are 3 different kind of types of things that are said. We use these today because these are things that the National Team Board had recognized as things that teachers had said to them, or things that they had been taught in the classroom. The other ones tend to be the other ones that we have the other sort of things we wish people wouldn't say have more to do with peer-to-peer, but these are actual things teachers have said. So the underlying message that young people hear when they hear quotations like this is that being poor is a negative reflection on your character. There's something wrong with you. Where it comes from is when poverty is made invisible, people will make assumptions based on everyone having enough money or time to spend beyond basic needs. The next thing. So what's the harms? So often low-income people have to rely on others or systems that can fail. For example, buses are late, making people late beyond their control, and then accusing them of poor time management is unkind. Many students feel they have to work or care for others. They simply can't give their time. So if teachers or coaches or adults in their lives could find other ways for them to contribute on their own time frame, low-income students would be able to better engage the activities that you have. Dirty clothes are often not due to laziness, but rather limited access to affordable laundry and larger wardrobes. I wanted to talk about this one in particular because this is oftentimes people will make a wellness check or do a CPS call when kids don't have clean clothes or have smelly clothes or whatever this. The reasons recently at a local high school, there were multiple school counselor noticed that there were multiple new reports of kids coming to school smelling bad or not having clean clothes. But this was a really savvy counselor who then just went and looked up the addresses of all the students who were new to the don't have clean clothing, noticed that they all lived in the same public housing unit, then called the public housing unit and found out that the laundry facilities which were being remodeled and that people were having to go farther away or pay for laundry and they couldn't use their laundry cards at the other place. So people were simply not cleaning their clothes. So it isn't that parents weren't taking care of those children or that those kids have some other problem, but just a little sleuthing was able to then help those young people unravel that problem, basically got them rolls of quarters and was able to get them access to all the kids from that housing project to be able to go do their laundry somewhere else and to solve the problem versus shaming kids, calling CPS and all of those sorts of things. Okay, so the solution is to check in with students and with a question first, such as, are you all right? I'm glad you're here. How is there something up with the bus? To question first rather than to assume there's something wrong with their character. They're lazy, they're late, they didn't manage their time well, their parents don't care that they're clean, right? That there are these second questions that can lend to belonging and better support of low-income students. So these lessons can be used in multiple different ways. You can talk about the whole topic. You can talk about one saying and why it's harmful. You can talk about, in general, how we approach talking to people about when things go awry. So these can be used in multiple different ways. And also, these have been used, I've been working with this one for a while. This can also be used if you have like a teacher staff meeting, right? Where we talk about how we see low-income students in our classrooms, right? And how we can better serve low-income students. Next slide. Okay, so this is Chris. This is Chris's thing. This is policy making. Chris is the author of this lesson, and what it is teaching kids how to better look at their school policies to better support low-income students. And so can we move in, and then Chris, you and I can talk about the actual policies that you want, there you go, that you were hoping people would do. So there are 5 policies here. And Ruth, you worked on this too, right? So Ruth, can you talk about, I know the first one was yours, a policy to ensure schools must update all students with current financial resources. Can you talk about why that was important to you?
This was important to me because coming into my high school, there was only a very few things that were made explicitly clear that I could get from the school. And I received this on the first day of school. And then as school was going on, I realized that I didn't have a calculator that I needed, or I didn't have books, or if I needed headphones for a class, I didn't have that. And I didn't know what to do since I couldn't afford those things on my own. And I would ask other kids that I knew were on financial aid, and they didn't know how to get those things either. And so it became such an issue that in sophomore year, I had to go to the school financial aid department and ask for it, and they were able to give it to me. But it wasn't something that students knew that they were able to go and just ask for. It wasn't something that was outlined to me when I was accepted into my school or anything like that. And so it was very unclear how much money you were able to get, the school was able to cover, or what does that look like exactly for students. And what they did tell us, it wasn't necessarily accessible for me to communicate to my parents because they're not super tech savvy, especially being immigrants. Like they're not very used to the way that my school operates at all. And so a lot of it for me has always been I have to be the parent in these sorts of situations in order to figure out what's going on and then figure out how am I able to communicate this effectively to my parents. This year was the first year I actually figured out how much money the school is able to spend on a student for whatever they need. You have like a $200 limit before they're like, okay, you need to contribute some for literally any item, but that's not something that's for other students. And it's also dependent on how much financial aid that you get, which I also didn't know until this year. And
you're a
a lot-
senior. Oh my gosh.
yeah. And a lot of times, like, I'll have other students be like, oh my God, like, I need this, but I can't afford it. And I know that there are financial aid, and I'm just like, go ask the school. And they'll be like, wait, you could do that? Like, those sort of things keep students from participating in school. Those sort of things keep students from being able to effectively do their schoolwork or effectively even understand what they're learning because they do not know what the school can cover to the fullest extent. And then what does that look like? Which I think is
Also, that
very
requires
important.
low-income students to, for all intents and purposes, beg for things, right?
Yeah.
Versus like, here's what's available to you. This is what you can use it for. You're going to be required to have the following things. This is how you should get, it, right?
Yeah. And also too, when they make changes to the way financial aid is working, you aren't necessarily notified about that either.
Got it.
You always have to beg to get any sort of information, really.
Yeah. Okay. The last one, a policy to expand free disability accommodations instead of having families provide it themselves. That is from Meta, who's another member of the National Team Board. She is not actually on poverty visibility. She's in disability visibility, but she requested that that policy be put in here because there's a lot of intersection between the disabled members of the population who are also low income. So they are not sure what accommodations they have or how do they get accommodations. And it's not detailed out. And the Meta found that in her school, kids that had a lot of money could afford the testing or could afford an advocate that they paid to help them navigate through the school system. But as a low income person and who had a parent who was an immigrant, they had to figure it out all on themselves. And the cost of it, they actually discovered after 4 years in their senior year is actually covered by the school district. But again, to Ruth's point, they didn't help. So what this lesson does is it teaches young people how to look at their policy, how to go and find things, how to navigate that space on their own. So it's a pretty exciting piece of curriculum. So Chris, when you made this, what do you hope the impact will be?
My hope was that, we could include everyone in this, include specifically people, of course, kids with poverty. This was made for them, and give them a boost or policies that can include them more, and so that they don't feel isolated as well, and to really give them more resources in those schools that may not give them it.
Thank you. I love when the National Team Board is working together around policy making, because policy making is permanent, right? It's not just one cool teacher who helped you out. It's actually making those change in the schools and being advocates for themselves. Okay, next slide. Okay, is that the last one? Is that the last slide? I think it is. So we can
yes, it is.
Yeah, we can pull out of the slideshow. So Jackie, what do you hope is the impact of doing all this work?
Yeah, so when I wrote the poverty visibility curriculum, I hope that like I can empower other low-income kids like me and find strength in their experiences. I wanted to help them build the courage and that I didn't have when I was younger to just see themselves as powerful and know know what resources they have, such as financial aid. And I know that when I was younger, I didn't see poverty as something that made me strong or gave me any benefits in life. But once they reach high school, I wanted to let them know that there's financial aid waiting for them. Poverty actually gets you to a lot of places and it connects you with other people. So when I joined my youth programs and I joined Beyond Differences, I was exposed to like a group of people who are similar to me, and that feeling was like relieving because um, you just know that there's people like you and people who share the same experiences. And now you know you have resources and people care about you. People actually see you as a human being and not as something else.
Okay, terrific. I think we're at 4:40 and I wanted to make sure that we had time for any questions anybody might have or thoughts that anybody might have. I should probably look at the chat, right? I can also talk about where you can get this. It's on our curriculum hub. There are 6 distinct pieces to it. It can be used all at once to do an entire unit on poverty visibility. It can also be used in pieces if you have like 10 minutes at the top of a piece. We also have in this unit belonging boosters, and that are small little questions that you can start a day with and talk about elements of your own identity around this, and it gives a sort of opens the door for kids to be able to talk about this. Belonging boosters are little questions like, what is something that makes your family unique or that you're particularly proud of? The questions like these that were written by the National Team Board, by the way, get away from the like, what did you do over holiday break? Because the one thing that yeah, Jackie, everybody's shaking their head. The what did you do on ski week vacation? Those are not questions that are fun to answer when you come back from break. And these are the questions that are available in the belonging boosters, or things that you can ask your classroom that create belonging, but they're not centered around privilege. So, and in matter of fact, can give low-income kids ways into being able to talk about their families in their communities in ways that bring out pride and bring out belonging versus otherness and isolation. So those are included in the curriculum. They're called belonging boosters. There'll be a copy of this recording. There is all of the microaggressions that the National Team Board talked about, why the phrase, but it's only $20 is terrible and nobody likes that phrase. And where the harm comes, it deconstructs it, gives you better things to say. The policy lesson is in there. Jackie's story is in there. A slideshow to go with Jackie's story is in there. You'll have all the fixins to be able to really talk about stuff. Barbara has a question. What would you say to a middle school student who is struggling with social isolation due to being low income?
Oh, can we answer?
Yeah, no, it's for you. They're not asking.
Okay. I think I would tell them, like, if I were talking to my younger self, that sounds really similar to me. So if I were to tell my younger self something, I think it's that that there are people there and there are people like you and there's people who will look out for you. And if you just keep just be more brave and more powerful.
Ruth, what would you say to kids who are struggling with it?
I think I would say that poverty isn't necessarily something that you can grow out of. There are things that you will take away from it, like with Jackie talking about resilience, that's a thing that you will learn, and that is something you'll be able to have and have that be a part of you as you grow up. But there's also things like always being worried about money or being super careful about how you spend it. Like for me, I know that's something that I'm hyper aware of, which can be both good and bad at times. But like you may be in a better financial position as you get older, but there are still things that stick with you, lessons or habits that you keep because of what you experience, but it doesn't define who you are. And you're never always going to be stuck in this place. And it is okay to struggle and to feel ashamed. It takes a while. I was very fortunate to have places like Beyond Differences to really help me um, figure out how I want to share my story and how to be able to feel more comfortable asking for help. But not everyone has the opportunity, but it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there. There will still be times where you feel isolated, but there's always like a light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's beautiful. Chris.
I would say like, being low income, that's not what makes up who you are. That's because who you are is your character, of course, low income has nothing to do with who who you are or whether that person is bad or good.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The idea. I like that a lot. There is other questions that people are asking. What tips can you give teachers who may feel hesitant or insecure about having these types of conversations?
I would say like that's what your students are feeling exactly, hesitant or insecure about these conversations. I think especially if a teacher has some experience with being low income, to whatever degree that may look like, I think it is also helpful to share that, because I think it's good to have like a literal adult be like, this, I've experienced something similar and I'm still came out at the other side. And like, you're not, it doesn't define you as a person, but I think, you know, being honest and being able to communicate with the students, even if you do not share that experience, I think it's important just to at least start the conversation going, or at least opening up the door for students to be like, okay, maybe I can let you know a little bit more about my situation now.
Jackie, does anybody else or Chris?
Yeah, I wanted to answer. I think they should be just do it because a lot of students who are struggling opening up and talking to them about these experiences and talking to them about or opening up about poverty in your classroom environment will allow a lot of them to probably feel belonging in their classroom and open up to you as well. So if there's any students who you're struggling with and you think that it may be because of poverty or others and you're too scared to open up, I think they'll be glad that you opened up to them.
I want to answer this as well. I mean, of course, it's not easy having these type of discussions. For many people, it's very personal. For many kids, it's very personal and something that they, of course, feel ashamed about to even talk about with their teachers or even with their own friends. Which is why it is very important to have an inclusive space in that classroom to make them believe that it's okay to open up. It doesn't make you make you any less of a person, or that they will be looked down upon because of it, or be judged because of it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think there was an educator that I had the honor of knowing for a very long time, and she actually mentored me and taught for 78 years. And her name was Helen. Helen was upper middle class white woman who went to Wellesley but taught almost predominantly in low income BIPOC schools. She came to an interview to get a job, and she walked in the door, and I had all kinds of unconscious and conscious bias when she walked in the door. But the minute I talked to her, she started with the story of I was a woman in math in the 50s. I was required to wear a skirt to teach. And she told a whole story of being othered for an identity. And she said, and fully opened up and said, I am not low income. I am not a person of color. I am not all these things, but I have a sense from my own experience of being othered. I have a sense of that the culture doesn't value me, that whatever I may say, people will be circumspect of. And I just don't want any child to ever feel that way. And so I became an educator. And when I became an educator, I wanted to go where kids were feeling that. So she had all the demographics of somebody that normally people would put on the outside, but she absolutely could be in that space, but she had to be brave enough to tell the story of being a woman in math. And Angkor, you might remember Helen Rogers, right? A tremendous educator. But so just, I love the comment here from Pamela that says, whatever we ask our students, we should also be willing to do. So it's that if you, the minute whenever you make connections with anybody, the minute you make that first step forward, it happens. I grew up Buddhist, and there's a saying that we have is that if you walk with your hands closed, the hands will be close to you, but if you walk with your hands open, other people will open their hands to you. And I think that's very much plays a part in what these three young people were trying to do, in that it gives tools to teachers to walk with their hands open. What do you wish teachers had or would say to you instead of those microaggression statements? So is there an example of like when somebody did it right? Oh no, long pause.
I don't think I ever gave a chance. I gave my teachers a chance to do it right.
Mhm.
Because I think when I was experiencing the most isolation was middle school and elementary school, but I wasn't the only one who was low income. Like it was like why, like my school was like, okay, like everyone here is like really, really poor and they live in like the back part of San Rafael or whatever. And like teachers just would completely I guess almost ignore that fact, and it would just be like if you weren't doing something right, it was a reflection on you, even though there was like an understanding that maybe your parents get home really late and you have to like watch your siblings or whatever. Like it was almost like that entire thing. It was completely overlooked just because everyone was experiencing that. So teachers never really had my experience, teachers never had a chance to do it right. So I don't know what that would look like.
Wow, it's honest. I'll take it.
I want to answer next. I think that this really relates to the previous question about the teacher opening up first, because a lot of low-income students and living in poverty, they stay in isolation and they don't want to talk about it. So a lot of teachers don't actually have this need to like, talk about like notice what they're saying or like correct what they're saying, because a lot of people don't speak up that they're living in poverty. They haven't done anything over the weekend. They like laugh it off or don't answer the question. So I think I haven't really seen any of my teachers do it right, but I think you guys can do it right.
I think I've seen it done correctly. In my own experience, I've had a teacher for which I showed up late to a class and was completely out of breath and came in and just and didn't call me out when I walked in the room, which was like, why are you late, or where have you been, or hey, or look at the time, right? It was just at the end, it was like, hey, you all right? You're out of breath. What's been going on? Like, and then I gave this whole saga of what had happened to me on the way there, and the teacher says, this is one of the best things that ever happened to me is this is, hey, there's another teacher who lives by you. Maybe I can connect you and you can carpool with them so you don't have to take the bus, 3 buses to get here. And that like transformed my life. I ended up getting to school like an hour earlier than I used to. So, but it is that simple thing of not punishing me in the moment, but rather being, oh, hey, what's up? Are you okay? Like, also, I looked terrible. I was very sweaty and flustered. So I think, and I had the same problem before. I live in a place that buses kind of like are on a suggested schedule, if anybody knows the San Francisco Muni, who knows, so the idea that different teachers reacted to it differently. And I think that was a beautiful way of doing it. I've also, I had a kid who came to me in tears of joy because there was a thing at school that you could get extra credit points if you donated food to the food drive, but this kid was already getting food from the food bank and was really scared that they wouldn't get the extra credit points for AP US history. It wasn't a small amount of points, by the way, by bringing in like food, and didn't want to have to take food out of their food bank parcel to get the extra points for AP US history. But the kid actually had a friend who went to the AP US history teacher and said, hey, this sucks. Like, all the low income kids can't get these extra points, and you're going to have to take foods out of their mouths to stick it on this table. And then that teacher got up in front of everybody and apologized. Said, my intention was to get the food drive going. I screwed up. I didn't think it through. And that certainly you do not have to have food bank. You don't have to bring in food. You don't have to find it. And here are 3 other things that we can do that don't require time and don't require food and don't require you to do things. And I screwed up. I'm sorry. And I now know why that was wrong. And that was just so incredibly moving to that low income kid, that 1, somebody stood up for them, and 2, a teacher was like, my bad. Oh my gosh, that's not what I intended. And it changed the culture, right? So those are good examples, I think. The question is how can this bring to our public schools in Maryland? All these lessons are available on the Curriculum Hub. You can be anywhere. We have our curriculum's been used everywhere from Hawaiian homelands all the way out to the Bronx. So if you are, sitting on your in like, I love Taro Valley in Hawaii, or you're in the Boogie Down Bronx, you can go on our Curriculum Hub, and the link is in the chat, and you can get any of these things. Also, if you want to teach these things and you would love Jackie, Chris, Ruth, Briggs, Edgar, or Meta to come and Zoom into your classroom and talk about these things and ask questions about these things, they can also do that. We can arrange for them to be there. Schedules are different and things like that, but we can also have them come in and talk about it. And also, if you we have open office hours that if you want to ask an educator in the professional development department, or you have specific questions for me, I'm Sally M at beyonddifferences.org, and you can shoot me a question. And also, if you have a question later on in which you would think, oh my God, I saw the poverty visibility panel, and then I thought of a question that I really want Chris to answer, but I forgot to ask him, then you can find me and I will get the question to Chris, and Chris will answer to the best that he can. And I bet the answer will be pretty good. So I realize it's 4:57. I want to thank Jackie, Ruth, and Chris for taking time out and stealing space from Lowell's classrooms and their different high schools, and taking time out of the day and having to take the later bus. And I wanted to thank Frederick and Lisette, who have created this incredibly rich and diverse and meaningful professional development program. And my partner in crime, Angkor, who always makes things spicy. So is there any other questions? If not, thank you very, very much for coming, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much for being here. I will go ahead and unspotlight y'all so you don't have to keep being on camera. Thank you so much for being here with us, y'all. It's always such a privilege to have the National Teen Board here in the room with us. I learn so much from you every time that we are together. And obviously, Sally, Angkor, always an education and a privilege. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. We do have a survey that we would love for you to fill out about this session. And we also will make sure that we share the link for y'all with for your students. If you have students who should be on the National Teen Board, who should be lending their voices to this work that we're doing, we'll make sure that the link to apply to the National Teen Board goes out with the recording of this as well. Sally, correct me if I'm wrong, it's rising freshmen up to seniors is the
freshmen through seniors. I would love some new applications. We're in admission season right now, so if you know a incredibly scrappy activist young person who wants to change the world, come hang out with Ruth, Chris, and Jackie.
Yes. Thank you all so much. We super appreciate your time. Listen, thank you.
I just want to say I got a comment that you all didn't see. Just
reading
thank you
everything.
again from Jessica. Amazing work. Congratulations on this curriculum and all you've done so far. And Rebecca also said really awesome and how articulate and just how good it was. Thank you.
Thank you. So
Thanks, Pamela.
hang on the line, National Teamwork.
Thanks. Y'all be on the lookout for an email from